Coming up on today's update, can what you eat and when you eat reverse diabetes? There's no cure, but new research has caught doctors' attention. Plus, can studying sugar-loving bats benefit humans with diabetes? Meet the local researcher asking that very same question. And good morning. It is February 27th. I'm Jessica Lovell, and welcome to the Morning Medical Update. Diabetes rates have doubled in 2 decades per the CDC. It is killing an average of 280 Americans each and every day. Now, there is new evidence that intermittent fasting could help and even reverse diabetes. Today, we'll meet experts exploring that possible breakthrough. We'll hear what a very strict diet involves and learn how to make the most out of just a few hundred calories a day. But let's start with our morning rounds. Today we are joined by Dr. Jasmine Camacho. She is a biologist and postdoctoral researcher with the Stowers Institute for Medical Research. She is live in her lab with us this morning. Doctor, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you.
So, Dr. Camacho, your research passion is bats. We have some photos from your expeditions where you gather samples, really cool stuff. Where do you travel to and what do you do there?
Yeah, so I work in the neotropics. So this is going to be the, Central America, South America, the Caribbean. And I love the Caribbean islands because, I grew up in California, so beaches are my thing. So the bats that I study are there. And I usually go to Trinidad, West Indies, Belize, but also Costa Rica, and many other places, which is the best thing about what I do.
Your two loves, beaches and bats. I love that. So let's connect the dots.
Yes.
What do bats have to do with diabetes?
Well, there are certain types of bats that have specialized on eating only sugar. So there are the fruit-eating bats, but what I specialize in are the nectar-eating bats. So these are bats that go around and pollinate flowers, and as a reward, they receive nectar. And nectar is composed, of glucose, sucrose, and fructose, 3 basic, simple carbohydrates, and that's all they will eat every day for their lives.
So do you see a chance of your research eventually translating into a benefit for humans? When might that be?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to understand is how these bats are able to thrive on just drinking sugar all the time. Because personally, I love to eat sweets, and we know that's like something that we shouldn't be doing, at least in moderation. But these bats don't. They just go for the extreme, and that's all they eat. And so I'm looking into how they can protect their own bodies and how they are resilient against all of the nasty byproducts of why we're not supposed to eat a lot of sugar.
Yeah, right. We put restrictions on ourselves, but these bats don't. But again, why personally so interested in bats versus other animals? I mean, you talked about these sugar-eating bats, but are there any other animals that might give us some more insight into diabetes when it comes to humans?
When it comes to humans, I think we should keep looking to bats for understanding our own biology because they're mammals. They have all the same biology that we do, but they take it to extremes. And we know the best example of that, right, is their ability to fly. They have hands, we have hands, but they've modified them to take to the night sky. And I think similarly, we can look to their metabolic adaptations to understand how we're able to do the same, thriving on, extremes, which is eating what we want to eat and not having to, modify our day-to-day activities. And so for me, they're the best way to, right?
Yeah, they're the best way to kind of simulate that, and that would be a perfect world where we didn't have to modify all that. But we were very excited to talk to you today. It's such fascinating research, and it's certainly a fascinating animal. So thank you for all you do and the research you're doing here in our area. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doctor. Well, our guests today who help humans understand and manage diabetes, Dr. Kristin Grdinovac, an endocrinologist here at the University of Kansas Health System and the director of the Cray Diabetes Self-Management Center at the University of Kansas Medical Center. We also have Dr. Felicia Steger. She is director of nutrition research at the KU Diabetes Institute. Good morning to both you ladies. Thank you so much for being here. And we also have Patty Leoit, a registered dietitian, program coordinator, and diabetes educator with the Cray Diabetes Center. Patty, good morning.
Good morning, Jess. How are you?
Good. I am great. So good to see you today. And thanks to all of our guests for being here. So before we dive in, we just want to give you a quick, simple, simplified explanation of diabetes. When we eat, our bodies, they break down carbohydrates and then turn them into blood sugar, aka blood glucose. When blood sugar goes up, your pancreas creates the hormone insulin. Insulin moves the glucose from your blood to your cells. But with diabetes, either your body doesn't have enough insulin or your cells may resist the insulin. So your blood sugar stays in the blood. That can lead to serious and sometimes deadly health problems. So Dr. Grdinovac, we're talking about specific dieting called intermittent fasting, and we've talked about this, IF. We've heard about it for the last several years, but why the focus on IF for this?
Well, I think dieting often comes with a negative connotation. It's a quick fix that most people fail or can't sustain. And it's really important to know that with type 2 diabetes management, that is lifelong. That involves always being mindful about the foods we choose, how much we eat, how we move our bodies, and then managing all of the other risk factors like blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so I think that there are a variety of diets that will work for people, and it's really patient-centered. It's going to be based off of what works best for the individual. But intermittent fasting is actually a really nice tool for some people, especially those who find themselves eating throughout the day and late into the evening. It really just involves a certain time period or a window where you're eating, and then another time period throughout the day where you're not eating or fasting. And this can help people limit their intake and their calories. If someone is doing intermittent fasting, it'll be important for them to follow with their healthcare provider, because many patients can develop hypoglycemia or low blood sugars, and so they can work with their healthcare provider to help reduce their medications.
Yeah, because it'd be interesting when you talk about long periods of not eating and needing to bring foods in to help level out your blood sugar. So yeah, not the D word, the diet word, not everything works for everyone, but this is one option. So Dr. Stager, different kinds of intermittent fasting. The most popular is setting that time frame of, like we were saying, 8, 10, maybe even 12 hours where you don't eat at all, but you're also studying something called intermittent energy restriction. What's the difference?
Yes, so they're both forms of intermittent fasting. So time-restricted eating, which is what you mentioned the first time, is really limiting our eating period to a shorter period throughout the day and extending the overnight fasting period. So intermittent energy restriction is another form where you alternate between periods of eating like you normally would eat and eating a severely reduced diet, so 500 to 800 calories per day. And both of these regimens really are targeting trying to extend the amount of time that the body is in this post-absorptive state or fasting state, where we switch from sort of this anabolic state of growth and storage to rest and repair, and really breaking down the energy fuels that are in our body. And that comes with also an increase in other processes related to rest and repair, like autophagy. So, if we're constantly in this state of growth and storage, our bodies are not as efficient at actually getting rid of cellular machinery and cells that are not working properly. And so that extended period of reduced or no energy intake can actually help the body to become more sensitive to insulin. And we think that might be particularly important for those with diabetes.
Well, and the term rest and repair certainly kind of softens the blow of fasting. It feels like you're doing your body good in that fact, but 500 calories, let's even say 500 to 900 calories a day sounds really low. Which is probably, Doc, why you were saying make sure you're talking to your doctor about this kind of thing. But how are you supposed to get through a day on that few calories? I would be hangry. I would be tired. I would probably have a headache. Are you drinking more water? How are you surviving off of that?
Yes. So, one thing that we do is we tell people that the overall energy restriction or calorie restriction with IER is actually similar to what you would follow on a low-calorie diet. You're just switching when you're restricting. So rather than restricting a little bit every day, you're restricting much more on certain days of the week, and then on other days you're able to actually eat normally. And the first few weeks that you're following this approach, people tend to feel pretty hungry. They may have some side effects like headaches, but that tends to subside actually. And we know that people have been able to follow very low calorie diets, the 500 to 800 calorie range, for weeks or even months at a time. And those are some of our severe weight loss approaches. We're actually taking that and just inserting a few days of very low energy intake, which people can actually adapt to relatively quickly after they do the first.
So those negative effects or those headaches, that's just your body kind of absorbing the shock, but it's okay, right?
Yes, a lot of people are really not used to not having a sort of a constant influx of energy from the outside, so food taking in as opposed to using the energy that we have stored in our bodies.
So Doc, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in research, our own personal research and studies that are out right now.
So most of the research in intermittent fasting with type 2 diabetes has shown that various forms of intermittent fasting can reduce hemoglobin A1C. It can help people reduce their weight, and it can help people reduce the amount of medications that they're taking. And I'll let Dr. Steger kind of talk about our research.
Yeah, sure. And so the research is really divergent a little bit in the form of intermittent fasting that people are doing. So the time-restricted eating, which is really the most popular, like you had mentioned, where you're limiting that period to a shortened period throughout the day, actually has less research than the intermittent energy restriction or alternate day modified fasting that I had mentioned. And one of the really interesting findings that we're seeing with IER in particular, and we're currently studying whether or not we can see similar effects with the time-restricted eating, is whether or not we can actually induce higher rates of diabetes remission. So that's a big question that we are targeting here with our studies.
So remission and reverse are these words that you're using in some of these studies and what you're finding versus the word cure. Is cure ever a word we would use when it comes to diabetes and using the way we diet to get there?
So when I hear the word reverse, I think that we've completely managed a disease in order to cure it. And that's not the case with type 2 diabetes, because there can be redevelopment of insulin resistance if patients don't follow those lifestyle modifications of diet and exercise. And so it can always kind of come back. And so I prefer to use the word remission because that means that if we are maintaining certain conditions like diet and exercise, then the diabetes will remain in remission and won't reemerge. But for example, if patients are really working hard with a low-calorie diet and they're able to maintain their A1C, it's critical that they continue to do that to continue to control their diabetes.
Management.
Correct.
Let's bring in Patty. She's going to help us out here, because when someone is fasting like this, they need to get the very most out of every single calorie, Patty. How do you help people with that?
Meal planning is very important, and to break the fast or eating the first meal of the day, or aka breakfast, it is very important to do the right way, right? So I usually recommend people to eat the meal that rich in lean protein, healthy fat, and complex carbohydrate, because all of these food, especially meal that make from whole food ingredients with high protein and healthy fat and fiber, can help slow down gastric emptying, which is promote satiety and help people curb their hunger and craving throughout the day.
So, Patty, I've got to talk about what you do, because it's great. The Cray Diabetes Self-Management Center makes some really nice recipe videos, really breaks it down, and you do it in such a great way, kind of like this virtual cooking class. So Patty, why is it so important that people find these types of recipes that just work for them? Go-to recipes that are easy and healthy.
So, like Dr. Grdinovac mentioned earlier about, follow a strict diet or any diet. In fact, it's not easy, especially if it's very strict. Sustainability is very important. This recipe that I usually pick and do for our virtual cooking with Cray, focus on help people incorporate, whole food ingredients, high in complex carb, lean protein, and healthy fat. For example, in the video, I was making the green shashuka, which is made from healthy protein from eggs. tons of fiber from green leafy vegetable and mushroom, and also a healthy fat from avocado. So these ingredients will help people feel full, sooner and longer, and also since it slows down the gastric emptying to help promote their, satiety throughout the day, and typically will help people curbing their craving for sweet and high carbohydrate food as well.
And Patty, we're going to show your latest recipe video at the end of this episode. So if you're interested, stay tuned for that. And if you want to check out all of her recipes, go to cookingwithcray.com. Lots of great information there. Patty, what are the biggest challenges for diabetes patients when it comes to their diet and food?
Like Dr. Grdinovac mentioned, for people that choose to follow the very strict diet, either strict low-calorie diet or a diet that very low in carb, it is very important for them to talk to their provider, their diabetes educator, because there is a risk for hypoglycemia or low blood sugar in case of people that fast for a very long time and they haven't been eating food for a long time and their medication had not been adjusted. And at the same time, when they start eating certain food that can raise their blood sugar, and they happen to stop the medication, they can also experience high blood sugar after the meal as well.
So we know, and Dr. Grdinovac, you'd mentioned people, just the dieting, and people do not like to be on a restricted diet. But let's talk about the mental health of going on diet, because that really plays with your mind when you're trying to do what's right for your body, and it's all through food. And it's so important to keep you healthy. But how do you keep people from feeling those, failure and shame and envy, and especially we're social beings and being around other people and trying to kind of stay in your lane and do what's right for your body, but also cooking for your kids or your spouse. So we talked a little bit about how the mental health aspect and how we get through it. You could both jump in on this one.
Sure. Well, that's actually one of the things that makes intermittent fasting different, is that people aren't having to dramatically change what they're eating because they're changing when they're eating. And so that really allows for people to be able to eat some of the same foods that they were eating previously, but still see some benefits by actually restricting when that food is consumed. And so for some people, we know that we don't think intermittent fasting is actually better than changing what you're eating, but it can be better for some people, particularly people who are really finding it challenging to make dramatic changes to the foods they're consuming.
So again, just another option if it works for you. Anything else to add?
Well, I think it's really important to make sure that you develop a good rapport and relationship with your healthcare provider, because we certainly want to screen for any history of disordered eating. Again, we're looking for strategies that will help the patient be successful. So we don't want to start triggering any sort of disordered eating patterns that will make someone not be successful. So screening for those is very important.
All right, I want you to send your questions in, because we've got these experts here with us at your disposal. Ask what you want. We've already got some great questions coming in, so we'll get to those in just a moment. You can go to Facebook, YouTube, or email us at the Medical News Network. Those links are right there on your screen. Let's get to our COVID count this morning with Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control. Happy Monday.
Yeah.
How are you?
It's good.
Good to see
you. Yeah. Right now for the COVID count, we have 48 total, 28 active infections, still 5 in the ICU and 3 on the ventilator. So still high numbers of active infections there.
Okay, I want to ask you about this pretty big headline that came out over the weekend from the Wall Street Journal. Has put the origins of the COVID pandemic back in the spotlight. The Wall Street Journal got their hands on a report from the Department of Energy that reported, this report concluded that the novel coronavirus most likely came from a lab leak. Previously, the Department of Energy was undecided on how COVID started, but even now the department is saying that they have low confidence in their assessment. What are we to make of that?
Yeah, I think they're still undecided. So I believe there's like 18 intelligence companies or divisions that create the intelligence community. This is one of them. This was a report from new classified information. I haven't seen the report itself. just the media reports and reading about it. But again, I think this seems definitely more political than anything. Again, to your point, Jessica, it seemed like they said it was low confidence. So instead of low confidence, you can either have medium or moderate confidence and then high confidence. This does not seem that it is either of those two. So this seems, what it says is it's a low confidence that it's being a lab leak. So what that means is they don't have all the information, or they have fragmented information. So it's hard to really take what is important from this and what this all means. You know, being a medical professional, being more of a scientist, I'm going to take the scientific approach. And right now, the scientific evidence that we have access to that is vetted by other scientists around the world, not just here or not just in China, really supports the fact that it came from a natural origin with a spillover or multiple spillover events around that market area. So, you know, we still want to see what all the information is, of course, but for this headline, again, to your point, they said with low confidence that this was a lab leak, but still, I think in the next couple days there'll probably be still some more information coming out about it.
Okay, well, thank goodness. Because is it okay for me just to be confused until then a little bit?
I think most people are.
Okay.
I think that's what this headline did more than anything. But remember, this report said that with low confidence, it wasn't with moderate or medium confidence, and it certainly was not with high confidence.
Okay, well, I'm checking back with you on that one.
Yeah.
Help us understand it a little bit. Do we have any reporter questions on the line today? Okay, let's get to our viewers. We've got some good ones coming in. Ginny is curious, does sugar itself cause diabetes, or is it just the obesity from sugar that causes it? I know this is a question people want to know. Does sugar cause diabetes itself?
I'll take that one.
Do you want to?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
So there isn't a food or food group that's actually prompting the diabetes. It's really the process that is that our body is responding to the sugar with, and so it's that chronic. Overconsumption or even just basic physiology and differences between individuals. So there is a large genetic predisposition for diabetes for some people, and it's the response to that. And so it tends to be overall lifestyle. So people who are very active, for instance, may not have the same response to consuming sugar that somebody that isn't.
But if sugar's messing with your blood sugar, I think that's why people make that leap. If that sugar is the one causing the problem with your blood sugar, then sugar is the culprit. But you're saying no, it is not.
Right. It's the cellular's. It's the body's response to that sugar.
Okay. Kim wants to know. I work out at Blush. I'm so confused because that's always what we get a lot. Okay. Kim wants to know, I work out at Blush Boot Camp 5 days a week. Is it best to eat before the workout or after? I'm always feeling drained after the workout. Patty, any advice on that when we talk about eating? Is it best to do it before or after so you have the energy to push through?
It depends on what time that you plan to do exercise, but for those that are taking the medication to help low blood sugar, it's very important for them to make sure that your blood sugar is not too low before you start the workout, especially it's going to be the intended exercise for a very long time. And plan to have a healthy meal after your exercise, meal that have plenty of protein and moderate carb, to help refuel, to put back and repair your muscle after the workout is also very important.
Patty, one of your patients, Susan, is giving you a shout out. She says, many thanks, Patty. You are great. You are a great resource and so easy to work with. So,
thank you, Susan.
Had to get that in there. So Joellen has a question, and a really important one. I can see people trying to do this on their own without the support or input from their doctors, just trying to lose weight. Seems pretty dangerous. How do we avoid that?
So patients should be transparent with their physicians on whether or not they're trying intermittent fasting, because like was mentioned earlier, some medications do need to be reduced, especially insulin, oftentimes basal insulin when we're fasting and mealtime insulin when we're not eating as much. And so doing this on your own may work for some people without certain comorbidities, but if you do have a complicated medical health history, I think it's best for you to at least bring this up with your provider so that you can work together and come up with a plan that works best for the individual.
And I can add on to that just quickly. It's really, the biggest risk are people who are on medications for things that we know intermittent fasting may impact. So for instance, people that are on blood pressure medications or diabetes medications, we know that with intermittent fasting or dieting in general, we may see changes in the body's response to that pretty early on in the process. And so your highest risk for hypoglycemia is really people that are on medications that may prompt that. So that's one of the things that we monitor really closely, is adjusting those medications as their bodies are becoming more insulin sensitive.
Payre is just asking if you could address insulin resistance and how that plays a part.
I'll take that one. The insulin resistance is really just the body's response to insulin. So if we're in a hyper or insulinemic state over a chronic period of time, the body is just sensing insulin less well. So we're not seeing that we see that you're consuming a meal, insulin increases, and then your blood sugar is going down because those cells are actually responding to that insulin, kind of opening up the channels to bring blood sugar in, and we see a reduction in blood sugar following closely after that meal. With insulin resistance, we're really seeing that insulin is increasing, but the body is not responding to that. So blood sugar is staying elevated over a higher period of time. And we know that there are a lot of things that impact both insulin resistance, and the opposite can help you become more insulin sensitive.
So Gene wants to know if there's a place he could find like a written fasting plan that helps accomplish these blood sugar improvements. Is there research to go to where you could print that out, or is it best to go through your doctor?
Yeah,
because everyone does it online. So
right, and this is kind of a problem. It is a newer intervention, and we really don't know if it's effective for all people or for whom it's really effective for. And so I generally am on the side of, we need more research before we're widely prescribing intermittent fasting to the public. But if you are interested in it, talk to a dietitian or another healthcare provider and really see, is this something that you think that you can do healthfully?
Okay, a little off topic, but how do the new drugs like Ozempic work with diabetes? And
I don't know.
Okay, I'm just looking your way. Jump in and let me know, because that's a big topic. People want to know how these drugs work and how safe they are. What can you tell us?
Sure. So Ozempic and other drugs within that class, the GLP-1 receptor agonists, are really great additions to lifestyle modifications, the diet and the exercise, while managing type 2 diabetes. They have been shown to reduce A1C. They have been shown to reduce weight. They work in 3 specific mechanisms. The first is that they help your pancreas release insulin when your blood sugars are high, and that's typically after you eat, so those postprandial high blood sugars. They also help your liver make less sugar and release less sugar out into the body. And the third mechanism of action is actually really interesting. It reduces gastric emptying, so that means it slows down how fast food leaves your stomach. And so patients are fuller faster and for longer, and so in turn they theoretically eat less. Ozempic and drugs within this class have also been studied and have been shown to have significant improvements in cardiovascular and renal risks, and so they're really a good bang for your buck. But they're not the end-all be-all, because studies have shown once people stop taking these medications that they can revert back to redeveloping that insulin resistance. Yeah. But they're a very good adjunct both for lowering A1C, helping reduce weight, and those other protective benefits.
Angela is pre-diabetic. Can that be reversed? And what is pre-diabetic?
So pre-diabetic is where you're starting to develop that insulin resistance. You're having dysglycemia. There's certain criteria in fasting blood glucose and your A1C that classifies you as euglycemic or pre-diabetic or to the edge of diabetes. And so the same lifestyle modifications are recommended for patients with pre-diabetes to regain that insulin sensitivity, mainly improvements in how much we move, our physical activity, and moderating our carbohydrate intake. Some patients can be managed with metformin under certain conditions.
So how would you know if you're pre-diabetic? How would you know to be even tested for that?
Sure, that's a simple blood test. You can get a fasting blood glucose and you can get an A1C with your primary care provider.
Are there any symptoms you would feel to to make you prompt you to go get a test like that?
Great question. Most patients with prediabetes don't know that they have diabetes. Most patients with type 2 diabetes don't know that they have diabetes until a physician tells them. The classic symptoms of type 2 diabetes are feeling really, really thirsty, urinating all the time, losing a bunch of weight. But that's really in those severe scenarios. And so that's why screening is really important.
Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, that you don't have any really specific symptoms. Okay, last question is going to go to Patty. Very important question from Tess. Best advice for replacing carbs. Give us a really great answer. That's going to make us really happy.
That's actually a very tricky question, right? So replacing carb, it's almost impossible. However, replacing the simple carb with complex carb is different. And you know, for anyone that wants to start doing the very low carb diet or low carb diet for optimal health, I would suggest to look into how to swap your simple carb, you know, like bread product, pasta, to a complex carb, you know, from whole food, whole grain, and follow me on cookingwithcray.com to get the recipe how to utilize and use all those whole food ingredients.
All right, thank you, Patty. Let's get some final thoughts. And Patty, I'm going to stay with you. What else do you have for us today? Any extra advice?
My final thought is about, you know, setting a realistic goal. You know, for those that thinking about changing the diet, especially drastic one, you know, talk to your registered dietitian, diabetes educator, and your healthcare provider, and set a realistic goal to promote your success, and more importantly, sustainability to follow the diet plan.
Patty, always great to see you. Thank you so much. Dr. Grdinovac, final thoughts from you today.
I think the most important thing with type 2 diabetes is always to find something that works for you. So we really focus on patient-centered care. Work with your provider to find something that you're going to be able to stick to, because we want you to be successful and we want you to sustain that success over time.
All right. Dr. Stager, final thoughts.
Great. I will actually follow up on both of them. You know, I think we've talked a lot about diabetes remission today. By definition, diabetes remission really means you have to be off of all medications and managing diabetes with lifestyle alone. That can be attainable for some people, and some people are really striving for that, but it's not attainable for everyone, particularly people who have had diabetes for a longer period of time. So we don't want people shooting for diabetes remission and an unsustainable lifestyle plan to then not take medications that may help them still achieve really good goals.
Really good information and research, ladies. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Dr. Hawkinson, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked more this past couple weeks about lifestyle modifications. It's always important continuing to do things that, you know, every little thing adds up and is synergistic, and so, you know, listening to these shows and listening to our medical teams and support teams all help to take those little steps so that overall the product and you are feeling better. You can be your best self, your healthiest self, and move on and stay well.
Doc Hawk, thanks so much. Best self, great advice. Right. Thanks so much to our guests and all of our viewers today for being with us. And as promised, we're going to leave you today with Patty's recipe for green shakshuka. You can find that recipe again at cookingwithcray.com. Have a great day. tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update. Shared DNA can mean shared health problems. Case in point, 2 siblings both needing new hearts. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Morning Medical Update. Hear a brother, a sister, and their transplant doctor break down the family history that affects the heart. Tuesday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.